This is a Porsche 996 Turbo, 2003 model, and these are really good cars if you're looking for like a first, high performance sports car to get. These are really good value because the values are steady or appreciating right now, and you can buy many of these cars for really low miles for under 50 grand right now, and then you can start adding stuff to it, and like a lot of cars, when you start doing a bunch of upgrades and things, it detracts from the value. But it seems the Porsche enthusiast, for models like this, they tend to enjoy seeing that stuff already on the cars, so it's not a money losing thing. But I've done a lot of work on this car because I really don't plan on selling it. I'm just doing that to have it for myself. But we've done a lot of upgrades. It has a full KW Variant 3 coilover suspension system on it, and that's a fully adjustable.
Did you put that suspension on yourself?
I had a local shop do that.
Okay.
Because they knew all the correct settings for the camber and toe in of the wheels and how to make everything clear and
dialed.
We're able to deal with all of those things that I would have just had to fumble my way through. And we lowered the ride height substantially in the front. I think it came down almost 2 inches in the front and about half that in the back. And there's new high performance sway bars on it and drop links in addition to the coilovers. I did put wider tires on it. These are Nitto NT01s tires. And I don't know if you can get a good shot of those, but the tread on them is really just for dry pavement driving. So you don't really want to take a tire like that out in the rain. They're DOT approved tires, but
are they?
In my opinion, maybe they shouldn't be.
They have sticky compound like the.
Yeah, it's a really soft compound, and half the tire is almost slick.
Okay.
And they do make a lot of road noise, but the grip on them is phenomenal. Got two 245s on the front and 305s on the back, and those are the stock wheels. They're 18-inch wheels. So a lot of guys will get these cars and they'll put bigger wheels on it right away to make it look more modern. They can jump to the 19 or 20-inch wheels, and if you look at what the guys are actually running on tracks for performance, they're the 18-inch wheels. So on the back here, I put this carbon fiber wing on. It's styled after a GT2 wing. So this year they had an option where the GT2 cars had a wing that was this shape. It's a wider wing, thicker wing, with these turned down ends.
Yep.
Right. So it's bigger than the stock wing. The stock wing was the size of this platform underneath it, and it would lower it down and fit tight and match up flush there.
Now, does this wing float up and down, or is it fixed?
Not anymore. So I fixed this wing. Well, there's a few things on these cars that are just going to go bad, and one of them is this hydraulic wing lift system.
Okay.
They always end up breaking internally or leaking hydraulic fluid.
It becomes a $high fix, right?
Yeah, you can fix them, and there's people that specialize in fixing them, and you can buy electric lift kits to replace them. But you're in the $1,500 plus range for stuff like that.
Yeah.
And I found this wing, and I got it for next to nothing because the center distance on the post was out of spec slightly, to the point where it bound a little bit with the standard lift system. And I told the guy, that's no problem. I'll buy that wing, and I made my own posts on my lathe and just fixed it.
And he discounted it, no doubt, heavily
So
for
I
you.
got the wing for a few $100, and it's all carbon fiber.
Nice.
Which is nice.
You can see the bi-directional cloth in there.
Yep, and these posts here I just turned on my lathe and polished them up. They're just aluminum posts mounted. The key works here with the front.
So the solenoid.
So you have a front. Now you notice that did pop open.
It did, yes.
So this is the second thing that goes bad on all these cars is the hood actuators. So especially the one in the front here. So there's an electric hood actuator that's buried in here.
Okay.
you have to pull this apart here, and you can find it inside of here. You know, they're like 80 bucks, and well, it seems like almost everyone has one of those go bad. The hood actuator here, I like saving some money. I took it out of there and fixed it myself. So there's some, if you take one apart, there's contacts inside there that get corroded. I just went in there and cleaned stuff up and tinned some surfaces with a soldering iron to make it more reliable, put it all back together, and it works like a brand new one now.
I see you're running a battery tender,
Yep,
which
so-
I am a big advocate of.
Yep, and I keep this right with the car in case I have a problem somewhere.
Yep.
I can always plug it in and
I have.
and in here we'll find the battery.
Oh.
Which is a lithium battery. It's a unit that they designed that it fits into space with lead acid battery. So it looks big for a lead acid battery, but it only weighs 10 pounds.
Okay.
You can pick this battery up with your pinky. It's that light. So it's basically replacing a 50-pound lead acid battery.
How reliable are those batteries? You and I talked about those before. You like them?
They have a really long life. The only thing I don't like about this battery is its capacity isn't.
It's not as big as.
It's not as high. So
Okay.
exactly. But on the other hand, when the voltage level on that battery gets low, it shuts itself off.
And saves itself for
It saves power.
last start.
So let's say you were to garage this car and forgot to plug it in the tender. You come back a couple weeks later, instead of a dead battery, you have a battery that's turned off. And you just hit the red button and it turns the battery back on, and you can start the car and then start charging your battery. So you never come to a dead battery. Now, the only problem with that is on these cars, they have an electric solenoid hood release. It's hard to open the hood when the battery isn't
To
working.
get at it. Okay.
And since the button that resets the battery is underneath the hood, we're screwed.
I
Now
see.
I brought that up to the guys at Anti-Gravity, sent them some messages and stuff, and talked to them about this access port connector here, if there was any way to hook up a remote restart button to the battery. And they told me this was just for doing diagnostics and building the batteries. It's not used for anything else. But then I saw a few months ago they're selling a battery now that has a Wi-Fi connection to it that you can restart it externally.
Kind of like what you were.
Right. So
Trying
they,
to get
so
them
they,
to
so
do.
they did solve that problem. I think they realized that some owners were having problems. A lot of these high-end cars do have hood releases that work off the battery. So it's cool.
Yes.
And I don't know if you can see the space there. There's a mat down here that hides a space for a spare tire that's not in there right now.
Okay.
And you can take that out and create some more volume for storing things.
Very nice.
But you can do a small grocery run and fill that space up. It's on the verge of being practical. So we put this high performance air filter in, and cut an extra opening here to get more air into the box.
Yep.
So the fellow that helped me with the engine work that I did is out in California, and he's done a bunch of these, and they've got experience with it, and they've dynoed them, and it's a setup that produces 600 horsepower and 600 foot-pounds of torque, and really broadens the power band, torque band on the motor. It pulls really good from like 2,000 RPM up.
That's
Really good.
amazing.
So he told me, you got to cut this out to get some air in, and so I went ahead and did that. There's I think it's a 5 psi fuel pressure regulator. It's buried down in there that we replaced, and the turbos were all replaced too. So what we did there, and you can cut to some other footage I'm going to give you from the build we did. Those turbos are the stock ones that came with it is what Porsche calls their K16 turbo.
Okay.
And it's a small turbo, and they initially went with those because they spool faster than larger turbos, so they're trying to reduce the turbo lag. So more modern turbo cars have other methods for reducing the spool and turbo lag time. But back then, you know, the way they like to approach that was just for the smaller turbo. So what it did here was, instead of going through a whole bunch of tear up on the car and figuring out how to mount different size turbos and different configurations, I went with this system this guy in California had to take the stock K16 turbo and replace it with another K16 turbo that's been modified. So it's modified on the lower side of the turbo. It's got a much larger impeller, a new impeller design, higher flow, and it builds a lot of boost down at the low RPM where the stock one didn't, and the wastegate release valve that's on it blows off at a higher pressure. So these turbos boost up to 19 psi. All right. So the inside of these cars is, a little on the verge of being dated. There's no fancy frills or anything, but it's really just the driving experience that people that love these cars are really after. So now this car is an automatic. A lot of people prefer getting the manual. It was kind of a toss-up with me. Some days I think I wish I got the manual, but I knew I was going to do the performance upgrades on the car, and it's easier to do if you have the automatic transmission because you don't have to drop the engine to do all the turbo replacements and intercooler replacements that I did on it. Those are just the stock pedals down there. They're really nice. They're nice, grippy, textured pedals. 2-inch extension piece a guy in Europe made. It just bolts in and extends the steering wheel out. The only drawback is the stalks get a little farther away from the steering wheel, but since I'm tall, I've got big hands, it's not a big deal, and I don't have to worry about hitting the stalks if I'm doing a track day and flipping the steering wheel around.
How much was the extension, roughly?
Oh, that was a little over $200 for that.
That sounds pretty good.
I've got this cab access port in here too, and that loads different maps onto the ECU, and it also functions as another external gauge to watch different primers on the engine. There's like a list of 50 different things you can display on there.
So you have this tied directly into the engine control module?
Yep, so it's plugged right into the port down there. Sweet. Right. And you can load different maps. So right now it's set for a fairly aggressive map for a stage 2 upgrade running 93 octane premium gasoline. Most of the time it gets used for storing things that I'm carrying around in the car, which makes it more practical. So it's not bad at all.
Jeff, how many miles are on this car?
This is just over 60,000.
It's pretty well taken care of.
But like I said, there's a lot of these out there that have low miles. This is probably average mileage. I think you can find some with even less.
For 03? Yeah.
So everybody always asks about these holes on the side. Oh, those must be air scoops, and that's where all the air comes in from the engine. And they're not for that at all. It's an airflow path to cool the intercoolers for the turbochargers. So the intercooler for the turbocharger sits back in here, and like that. So it's sitting back in there like this, and the air flows through here, through the intercooler, and the exhaust air through the intercooler comes out down here. So the engine's generating boost from the turbos. The turbos are compressing this air, and it pushes it up through the intercooler. The intercooler takes the heat out of that compressed air because compressing air heats it. So the hot air goes into the intercooler, hits the intercooler, and cools it down because this air is flowing in and exchanging the heat from a higher boost level before you get detonation. So as soon as it starts detonating, the sensors in the engine will pick up the detonation and pull timing, and the performance will drop off. So the whole idea is to keep the car from pulling timing and keeping it from detonating. So I put larger, better flowing Wagner intercoolers in here, and all new plumbing and piping for that. Did that on both sides. The stock units are prone to air leaks. They have plastic end caps that can leak, especially when you start pushing higher pressures through from more efficient turbochargers like I put on here. And it was one of the things they recommended doing was replacing the stock intercoolers with these. So one other quirk in this car is the Porsches are known for having the ignition key on the left side. which is a throwback to the days of racing at Le Mans, where they would do the running start to their cars.
Oh.
And the whole idea was to get in the car quickly, get the key in, have your hand on the shifter, and start the car, right? Make use of everything on your body to get the car off the line as quick as possible. You see the cab unit there. So I've got that set up now. It's got engine RPM, battery voltage, vehicle speed, and then over here it's reading out the ignition timing. That's the manifold pressure, boost pressure, and oil temperature. So I like having the oil temperature there. It lets me know when the engine's warmed up.
Yes.
I don't like to wheel on it until it's warmed up.
Yep, I'm with you.
So a lot of people decat their motors or take the mufflers off. And this has it on there. It's got a nice tone to it. It's not obnoxious, and it's not something that after a while you're wishing it was quieter. The whole thing with the turbocharging is you got to be able to move that exhaust gas efficiently through the turbos.
Yes.
And if you're building pressure at the exhaust system, you're not going to move the gas through the turbo. So you want something that flows fairly easy after the turbos. The 200 cell cats are much more open and flow much more air. So you get a little bit of engine noise there just doing normal driving. And after it warms up, when we romp on it, you'll hear it makes a lot of noise. So you can see the steering wheel position I got now with this extension. I like driving, 9 and 3 o'clock with the hands, and my hands are at shoulder level. Just a slight bend in the form, in the elbow, and then I got plenty of clearance for my knee to get to the pedals. Everything's accessible. If I'm going, so the ride's a little harsh with the coilovers on it, but that's just something you put up with. If you take it through a few high-speed turns, you realize how much you love those coilovers.
Yeah, that's where you'll really appreciate it.
This car is just flat and solid. There's like zero sway to it. Driving it around. Still haven't got on the boost yet. So the automatic transmission isn't too bad. It just sometimes it needs some help with the downshifts. You can use these buttons on the steering wheel to force the shift even when it's in automatic mode. If I want to downshift it, I can pop it down a gear or 2 gears. So if I do like an acceleration, from the stop, it's second gear, and it'll pull good until about 70 miles an hour, and then you shift into third gear, and from there it'll